Gentlemen, welcome to the Be the Man podcast. I'm your host, Greg Denning. I'm the creator and coach of the Be the Man Masterclass and Tribe. Today's guest is my longtime friend and mentor, Matt Townsend. Matt is a marriage coach and counselor. He's an author. He's on the radio all the time. He's on TV all the time and speaking seminars. He spends his whole life helping couples have great marriages or save their marriages if they're dying. And his advice, his insights over decades of working with couples is so valuable, just precious. You're going to hear things today that'll just blow your mind like they did mine. And I've had the privilege of knowing him for a long time. In fact, he was close to Rachel when I met her. And so we started our marriage together and our relationship together in communication and contact with Matt. And it's just been a joy watching him over those decades and the people he's helped. And so I wanted to have him on the show, of course, because what could be more important, gentlemen, than having a rock solid, loving, intimate, wonderful relationship with our wives. I mean, this is gold. In fact, I hope you share this episode with your wives and you listen to it, take notes, listen to it with her, discuss it, share it with friends, family, colleagues, leave a review if you like it afterwards, give us a rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast. But this is just pure gold for being a great husband and for building a phenomenal marriage. And he's going to give you the insights, things he's seen change just in the recent years. Last year, things have shifted, and men and women are facing different challenges and struggles. And he points that out. And he's got a finger on the pulse for marriage. And I know you're going to get a lot out of this. So take notes if you can, jot things down, write down impressions that come to you, and commit. Gentlemen, commit to take action and create an absolutely extraordinary marriage. Matt, I am so grateful to have you on the show, brother. Appreciate, all you do. And so we'll just I'll give background here, but like, it's been 22 years, man.
Forever.
And
we're all grown up.
And a big influence on us, like getting married. Rachel talks about you still, our whole family talks about you all the time. And so that connection, we've always just had, you had a big place in our hearts, brother.
Thanks,
And
man.
You've been doing so much good for marriages. So I was thinking, like, I've got to have you on here to share all the stuff you've seen and learned and what you get to help. So let's.
I'm honored. And you know what? I'll never forget when Rachel brought you in to meet me. I knew right then that you were going to take the world by storm. You are a firestorm, man. And I love to see what you're doing. You guys, what a pair. And anybody that watches you needs to know, like, this isn't show. This is for real. Everything the Dennings show, they are. And no one's perfect, right? But you guys are the real deal. So it's cool. I get to speak on a lot of podcasts, and not every one of them do I believe are as sincere and deep as you do. So great to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. Give us a little bit of your background, man. Because you were working with couples when I met you. So you've been in this game for a long time.
25-ish years. So I have a really weird history. My parents divorced when I was 8. So from 8 years on, I always wanted to do relationship stuff and tried to figure out what that is, right? Like, is that a therapist? Is that a lawyer? I wanted to be a mediator, really, is what I thought I wanted to do. So I got a bachelor's degree in journalism, which was actually really handy for where we are today, when everything you have to do is you have to make your own content.
Yep.
So got a master's degree in conflict resolution and got a job at Franklin Covey Company. Used to travel the country for them, was an executive coach, basically, leadership trainer and consultant. Worked a lot with Stephen Covey, amazingly. Got to sit in his office and learn from him. And then on my side, I started mediating divorces. I thought that would be fun, Greg. Like, what could be more fun than terminating long-term
That sounds hard, is what that sounds like.
It was horrible, except in doing that, I learned how to start implementing all of this content. So with Covey, I trained corporate executives all over about how to deal with difficult people. And I realized that, man, you can learn this stuff, but why aren't they teaching couples? So every couple that would come into divorce had the same problems. They just didn't know how to do anything with it.
Right.
And so right then I got this idea, let's start training. So this was 20 something years ago, 22 years ago. Let's start teaching people how to talk, but let's get it to the couples, and let's get it to the people who need it most. So I started building content. In fact, the ultimate history of it is when I worked at Franklin Covey Company. I don't know how much you know about it. They had a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There was another book that came out that was called First Things First, which was about the private victory. And Stephen Covey always used to teach, for every public victory you have to have a private victory first. So private victory always precedes the public. So in the private victory, those were the first 3 habits of the 7 habits. You know, be proactive, put first things first, be proactive. What is it? Begin with the end in mind, put first things first. Yep. They never had the public victory book written. And so while I was at Covey, I started writing the public victory book, which is about think, win-win, seek first to understand, then to be understood, and synergize. So I was putting that book together with the dream that someday I'd write that book with Stephen Covey. And then I got this prompting after getting so much of it done in my life and my master's degree. I went and got another master's degree in human development. I went and got a PhD in human and organizational systems. Yeah, crazy. And then
you were single-handedly keeping that university going.
I totally was. And then then I got this prompting that I needed to leave and just go do marriages. So I left the best gig around and started doing my own stuff, built my own company, and then took all this content and started teaching it to couples 21 years ago.
It was training for your calling.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
And minute by minute, and I never knew ahead of time where I would go with any of it. I just knew I was supposed to do this part, and I did it. And then I would go do the next part, and it didn't make sense necessarily with the first part. Then the third part came and the fourth part came. Then all of a sudden, boom, I'm in divorce mediation. Then all of a sudden, I had the ability with all my background to start turning these marriages around and giving them the tools to start fixing their own stuff. And I've been doing that for 20 plus years since.
Isn't that the path of life? If you are paying attention and listening to God and to what's going on and moving forward, I love how you describe that. It's this part and not until after that, then this part, and then it all fits together. And you're like, oh, I got this.
Well, and then when you look back on your life and you have a different perspective, it all makes sense. When you're in it, you don't have the depth of field. You don't have the ability to see the forest for the trees. But once you can look back, boom, it makes sense. Now, it's funny because looking forward, I feel like I'm at a different level where I have a different perspective. So I can now start, and a different level of competence and power and ability and resource, where now I have more ability to create what I wanted. Before I evolved into it, and now I can be a creator. It's almost like you have to learn the level of maturity or gain the level of maturity to become a creator or a co-creator with God or inspiration. And now he's lifted you to a point that you're now independent, and now you can truly start becoming interdependent.
Exactly.
Powerful. That's synergy, by the way, right?
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's synergy. Yeah.
Hey, I'm curious, like when you were starting on your own, did you feel confident, or was there some trepidation and doubt? Did you have some nights like, hey man, is this going to work?
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 You know, I always had a sense of, it's really interesting, confidence in my own kind of calling, like what I'm called to be. I had confidence, but not clarity. So I knew I was the right space, being the right person, but I didn't have clarity exactly what I was to do. But then there are always nights. There's just always nights. And here's one of the things I've learned is the minute I start to really like vibrate lacking confidence, usually means I'm not in my spirit. I'm not in my highest self, my essence. It usually means I'm in my mind. So if I'm too in my body or my mind, I vibrate too much nervousness. And then, well, if I just notice it, the minute I notice it, I kind of lean back away, take a big deep breath, and then I find myself sitting back into just me. And when I'm in me, I don't need to know tomorrow. I can just be here now.
Right.
When I'm in my mind, I want to have the plan and the whole layout. I want to know everything.
Yep.
And again, make a plan. Go ahead. The neat thing is the world doesn't care about your plan.
Yeah, exactly.
Like how many people just try to have the plan be perfect, but the power I found is, in fact, I actually like those moments where I'm not feeling as confident, because it forces me to reattune and to kind of get back into my real spiritual or essence self, to then ground myself and then move forward again.
Yeah. To get into that deep inner self, which I think is the real self or the best self.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
it's not the counterfeit.
That's awesome, man.
That's
beautiful.
and I do it. I do it all the time. And then, but then your mind takes off and thinks you can handle it.
Yeah.
And then you get stuck. Yeah. And then you realize, oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah.
A little bit of humble pie.
Yeah.
You come back down.
It's pretty neat.
Okay. So man, you've been able to work with so many couples now over these years, and you meet with individuals, you meet with couples. I know you do big presentations, back in action after the COVID stuff that's happening. You're on TV all the time. Just lots of opportunities. You have both a large circle of influence, and then bring them in, one-on-one, and have that small thing. So let's go in, brother. Speaking to men.
Yeah.
Here's the coolest thing about this. You got 20 some odd years of seeing this in action, what works and what doesn't. That is like, it's wisdom, because you've paid a price over a long term. It's like the mechanic. You drive up and he's like, oh, I know what's wrong with your car. You're like, you haven't even looked under the hood. He's like, oh, I got you. I got you. And you see it so much. So what are you seeing? Well, okay, two-part question. What are you seeing, and has it shifted in the last decade or so?
Oh yeah. Dude, that's great. Yes, I have seen it shift. In fact, I think everyone can kind of see the shift of there's really like a weird convergence going on of a bunch of issues that have never existed. And I think technology is adding to a lot of it. I think for sure social media adds to stuff. Our falling away from institution and certain tradition.
Yep.
Where a lot of people aren't seeing the need for institution. Yeah. That creates something now. And it's really weird. Like, as even people are getting older before they marry, fewer people are marrying.
Yep.
So I think there's also a really interesting shift in what we want from our partner, what we think marriage is.
Ooh.
We used to, for years ago, marriage was just kind of a real estate kind of transaction where it was the creation of families and then the sustaining of your fiefdom, right? Yeah. So my children would then keep this part of this township, and we'd marry that family, and that would secure the power structure of these two families. Then it got into more just like, we need to move our families on and create some independence. But now it's really an interesting dynamic where marriage more than ever before is now about what's good for me. Do I like this? Is this serving me? It's not about serving a family. It's not about serving a community. It's not about serving any other institution. It's not even an institution. It's just an additive thing to make me better, which is
that's like so counter to what a marriage could be or is.
That's right. And so what it's made it is it's almost made it an ornament, and it's something we ornament our lives with instead of something that we use developmentally to make us godly and to make us lose ourselves. And so even what's happening is, it used to be guys were kind of known for just wanting a really hot wife, and the women just wanted a really rich man.
Yeah.
Hot wife, rich man. But there's a weird thing that's shifted now, where women now are becoming way more picky about how their man looks because they're so independent. They don't need a man to provide as much as they need the man to meet their needs. But guess what men are doing? Men now are wanting less and less to have to change. So they don't want to marry a woman that's going to expect change. So all of a sudden,
that's a bomb right there.
Women don't need men, and men want to be wanted without any expectation of them changing. And that creates a really weird marriage because in all honesty, I am not the man I was when I was 22 and 21 and got married.
So
I'm glad my wife wanted change.
Yeah.
And so it's creating a different mindset. And if now we have to pick and find the person that is exactly what we want, and there is no way that we should expect anything to change, then what is marriage?
A recipe. That's a recipe for disaster right there.
Not possible.
Yeah.
Not possible. And none of that, I believe, is what any of marriage was about. Marriage is about two people learning to figure out how to lose themselves to find themselves. And as they lose themselves, they actually take themselves to another level and another level. And so that's a huge trend that we're seeing. And that's a big deal too, by the way. The whole movement away from institution is a big deal because it's funny, in our institutions is where we create our roles and our identities, right? So as a father or as a husband, that's a role. But in that role, it's also part of my identity. I now know I need to work. I now need to protect. I need to provide. I need to be there for my partner. I now have relationships with her family. Yep. There's a hierarchy of respect. I now need to grow my way into the family. And then eventually, as they age out, I will become the elder and raise up a family with me. So that without those institutions, we don't have roles. We don't have a role of a student going to school. We could go to school anytime we want. You don't need the school to go to school, but we don't have the role of an employee. We don't have the role of leadership. We don't have the role. So even as we think of more and more people that are now more independent in their workplace, one thing that they might be losing is certain roles, certain relationships, certain orders that probably we need to make sure we're doing, like mentoring, like you talk about a lot, Greg, is get a mentor, get people that if you don't have a hierarchical business that you're in and you're running your own business, you've got to have mentors, you've got to have leaders, you've got to have senior leaders that you can go to and pick their brain and learn what the next level of creative co-creation looks like, right?
Exactly.
So all these roles are a big deal. We don't, even our connection to our own country, our own government, our own constitution, without certain orders of those roles and relationships, we don't know quite how to treat each other. So that's a big deal. Now that creates one other thing, Greg, that is life-changing. The most cool thing that I've ever gotten into, probably in the last 10 years, is attachment stuff. Have you gotten into that at all? 60%.
Fascinating.
60% of people in the Western world right now have a hard time attaching and connecting deeply with the people in their lives. And that becomes one of the biggest drivers of why in our marriages we fight and flight so much, why our fight and flight instincts kick on, and why we can't communicate through some of the most basic issues of life. And so if you have an unsafe attachment issue, you're either going to usually become a fighter, kind of an anxious attach, it's going to control and demand, or you're going to withdraw and detach a lot. And in a lot of marriages, you only need one person doing it to start to create a really funky pattern that will pretty much cause every fight and every flighting moment. So that's something that we can probably dive into for a bit, because I just think if every man could understand their instinct to use fight or flight, it makes sense out in the world, out in the wild. But we don't need to engage fight or flight with our most intimate, close partner. And if it's turning on, fight or flight was never a bonding tool. Fight or flight was always
survival, man.
Survival.
It's like your wife is not a saber-toothed tiger, bro.
Right.
Like,
relax,
stay in it.
Man. She's not that bad. So that really is something. And then what it gets down to are 4 needs, right? Everyone needs to know they're lovable, that they're capable, that they belong, and that they're safe. Lovable, capable, belonging, and safe. I had a guy come in my office that was worth about $100 million. And he just didn't feel like he mattered in his marriage. Nobody in the family listens to him. He runs a big company. Nobody cares what he says at home. And he said that. He goes, I don't feel loved. I don't feel like I'm capable in my own home. My wife tells me I'm not. I don't belong, and I'm not safe.
And contrast that with his success at work. When he speaks, people jump. When he gets things done. So he's the man over there. At home, man, he's nobody.
Right. And that's interesting because at work, that's his counterfeit.
Yeah.
His own ability to even make it happen. But because this is what happened. I asked him, what's your earliest memory of feeling like you're not loved, you're not capable, you don't belong, and you're not safe? And he got emotional and he said, I was 15 years old and I didn't make the baseball team. I always made the baseball team. I grew up with my friends in the baseball team. In fact, he said, I was good, but my parents weren't rich and they didn't know how to suck up, and their parents weren't pushing on the coaches and they weren't showing up at everything. And I didn't make the baseball team. And I go, what did you do? And so at 15, he felt unloved, incapable, not belonging, unsafe. And so what he did is he built a script, a behavior script. We call it BS for short. He built some BS.
Exactly.
And the script meant the minute he feels that vulnerability, he detached, he fled, and he escaped from that awkwardness. I go, so you didn't hang out with your friends? He goes, no. Like, they tried to get a hold of me and contact me, but I felt weird. So I just disappeared.
So he just
pulled away.
Totally withdrew.
And guess what he did? After 1 year as trying to go to school, but never going to any of the parties, never going to dances, never doing anything, he quit school, went and got his GED, went to college at 17, kind of became a loner, all by himself, got his degree in 3 years, and about age 20 started a tech company and grew it to $100 million. And every time he didn't belong in the meeting with that person, if he could, he'd end up firing him. If he couldn't, he'd end up escaping, hiring someone to manage him. And he built an empire.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the empire is it's way less intimate than his marriage.
Sure.
And it's way less intimate than his family. But what's funny is that's a script of a 15-year-old.
Yes.
And then
it's old programming.
So it's all old programming. And here he is as an adult male, 50. And all I needed him to learn to figure out was when the little boy would appear.
Yeah.
When would the teenager appear? And every time he started to notice the teen appearing, all I would ask him to do is to re-script as the adult in that moment. What do we do as an adult? What are we doing as an adult? And weirdly, he had ideas. Well, I should stay. And I'm like, so if your kids felt that way, what would you do? He goes, I would track them down and I would try to talk to them. And I go, well, why don't you do that? Yeah. When your kids feel insecure about the relationship with you, why aren't you chasing them down and tracking them down? And he just looked at me like, I don't know. And I said, well, it's probably because you're 15.
Yep.
That's happening.
Script. Yeah.
And he runs the old script and he can't even see it. So then I'm sitting there and I asked his wife, I go, if you saw your husband as a 15-year-old just get shattered by not making the team, what would you do right now as an adult woman to go take care of that boy? And she started to cry. And she said, I would go over to him and I would love him and I would tell him he's amazing and I would tell him he's capable and that's not fair. And I would love him and I'd take him and I'd get him friends and I'd help build him up right then. And then I asked her, why don't you do that for him right now? And by the way, he's crying. So notice, she can serve his little 15-year-old, but she can't serve the adult when he's 15.
Yeah.
But she knows exactly what to do for the 15-year-old. And so once we start to identify that little kid that's broken in us, then we don't have to either control everything that's anxious attachment, and we don't have to detach from everything, or we don't have to do a combination of both. And so that's what I see happening in every relationship. And we got to watch out for it because sometimes we'll counter it by going out and being an enormous success in every other way.
Something else. Yes.
Yeah. Because we can look ripped because it's easy. And it's not easy. It's easier sometimes to go work out and get fit than face your 15-year-old.
Yep.
And sometimes the reason you're getting fit, and we've all met him at the gym, the guy that's got too big of a neck, but he's probably trying to, counterfeit his own insecurity that he picked up at 12. Yeah. So now he's reliving that same script as an adult. I'm just going to be bigger, or I'm just going to pick up more women, or I'm going to be more manly, or I'm going to be, it doesn't matter, whatever you're doing. You want to make sure you're doing it by your essence and your highest self, your real self, and not your broken, attached mind and script,
and not the BS.
Yeah.
So, okay. So as you're describing, that was just so many great examples there. Is it more about that in your experience? Is it more about underlying scripts and old programming, things like that, than it is particular issues?
Yeah. Great question. You know what I find? It's about, there's generally three things that tip it over, the relationship's over. Sometimes it's just our differences, just typical differences, right? And John Gottman says about 7% of our problems are kind of unresolvable. There's just differences. Another part of it is our attachment, that attachment I just described. And another part of it is kind of our temperament. It's our sensitivity. I kind of look at it as two things. It's your anxiety levels and it's your ADHD levels. Right. So that's kind of, in my world, we call that high sensitivities. Yep. That's a temperament. And high stimulation seekers. That's another temperament. And so what a lot of times tips it over is you don't even know it, but you're a high sensitive person. And high sensitives, it's a real thing where about 20% of the animal kingdom pick up 4 times more stimulation than and physiological stimuli than the other 80%. They pick up more smells, more heat, more energy, more vibration. So those are the ones. I'm way high sensitive. So I can tell when the air turned off. If somebody's tapping in front of me, I can hear the tapping. If odors, I was an EMT on an ambulance when I was 20, 21. And man, I could see anything, but don't make me smell it. And the minute I smell it, my senses would go off. So some of us are high sensation seekers. And that, if you think about it, it's 20% of the animal kingdom. So it's an evolutionary trait. And what it makes some of us is way more able to read what's going on in the world.
Yes.
But then what we do is we then pick up 4 times more data, and it tends to overwhelm.
Right.
Because now there's too much stuff. And so the high sensitives then eventually get diagnosed with anxiety. And then when they're anxious, they start either going over in their anxiousness or they go under. And the over is where they're mean and pissy and controlling and demanding and reactive. And the under is they veg, they escape, they detach, they hide away. And if you go over or under, it depresses you.
Yep.
So our mental health model, we always just make it a bunch of clinical diagnoses like, well, that's anxiety or that's depression. What it also could be is high sensitivity that leads to overwhelm, and overwhelm leads to some version of action that leads to a depression or overaction.
Yeah.
And by the way, so as a high sensitive kid, I may not have ADD. I just may not focus because I have 4 times more information.
Right.
But if you don't know that, that's a temperament. If you don't know you have that temperament, you think you're crazy.
Well, and everyone else is telling you you're broken.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because, well, and then if you're too into stimulation, you can be high sensitive and what's called a high sensation seeker.
I think I'm both, bro.
I know you are, definitely. You are. And I bet Rachel's for sure high sensitive, but may not high sensation seeking.
Exactly. Yep.
So what the high sensation seeker is the guy that will go cliff jumping, but won't jump once. They'll jump 50 times.
I just got to keep going. I'll tell Rachel, like, hey, babe, I'm going skydiving. I just got to get out.
No, you're a high sensation. So that's temperament. But if all of a sudden, if you don't know your temperament and you don't know just gender differences and overall differences, and you don't know your attachment history, those are the things that really I see are tipping marriages over. And what the number one thing that tips us all over is our ignorance. We don't know any of these things. We don't know any of them.
No idea what's happening within ourselves and to our spouse.
That's right. No, that's right. And if you don't know it,
I'm angry. Why is this happening? And you just think it's normal. You talk to your neighbor, and your neighbor's like, yeah, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
No, man.
That's why I call the high sensitives Ferraris in a world full of Chevys. Yeah. Some people aren't Ferraris, right? So high sensitives make horrible Navy SEALs, horrible, but they make awesome intelligence officers. They can read the patterns of data and they see the trends and patterns, but don't put them in a hole with guns going off where they're going to have to shoot someone.
Too much.
Because you know what that creates? So high sensitives are much more prone to have PTSD in war events, during war events.
Yes.
Because it's too overwhelming.
It's too much. And then they replay it and it just is all the time in their head where someone else can sneak past that, but they're like, no, it's all here.
No, that's right. So imagine that. And if you don't know any of this and you're supposed to be a man, everyone wants to be a Ferrari. But so if you're not a Ferrari, you're a Chevy Suburban, let's say. Chevy Suburbans can go everywhere. It's an awesome car and you can have 8 people in it, but a lot of Ferraris prefer fewer people, just a couple. And they might, but some Ferraris, by the way, love a lot of people, but they need to take breaks and get away. Yeah. And they can be genius to a point, and then it's overwhelming and they pull away. So if you don't know this, but you're supposed to be a man, it messes with you, right? I played Little League football as a high sensitive, and I'd get in the huddle to call the play, and I could smell Tommy's crotch from across the huddle. Yeah. And I'm like,
distraction.
Yeah, like, Tommy, like, have you washed your pants yet? Like, you got to take your pads out and your mom will wash your pants. You got to wash your pants. And the coaches are on the side like, call the play. I'm like, Tommy hasn't washed his pants. And so I'd probably not, but I'd get tackled. I remember getting tackled and some guy's sweat was all over my arm. And I'm like, what the flip? Who's losing this much fluid? Make sure you're drinking, guys. It was like, but so I knew, and I pick up enough info to know that this isn't manly. It's not manly. About everyone else. I worried about everyone else getting their number of plays. I worried about everyone else making sure their dreams were made. So these differences are real. And if you don't know what they are, are you there, Greg?
Yeah, there we go. It's back. There's a little glitch there. So, hey, is it predominantly one side or the other? Are women generally more than men.
No, that's what's neat about this.
Really?
It's a genetic trait. It's an evolutionary trait. I mean, it's an evolutionary trait, which means it's evolved to have 20% of men and 20% of women. 20%
Okay,
of
so
giraffes.
it's a survival kind of
Yeah,
thing for both
for the herd.
sexes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
for everyone.
if you go into marriage and you're completely clueless about this stuff,
Yeah.
and there's any mismatch there and you don't know what's going on or why. I remember, when we first got married, I was like, wait, this is the way I experience things. And ignorantly thinking like, well, if I experience it like this, then Rachel should too.
Right. That's it.
And then I'm like, why are you having this different experience?
Yeah.
It was so frustrating to me.
But it won't matter if you're both Chevys. And it might not matter as much if you're both Ferraris. But if you're a Ferrari and they're a Chevy, it's going to matter.
Yeah.
And it's also going to drive up the likelihood of attachment issues because you experience everything more acutely. Everything's bigger and everything's more real.
Oh, that's big right there. So everything's a big deal.
Yeah. So of all the people I see that are having, and a lot of my clients are at the point of divorce, right? So about 35% of my clients are deciding if they're going to divorce. Of that group that comes in, a significantly disproportionate amount of them, like 80 to 90% of them have this one of them has this high sensitivity.
Interesting.
Because that's why they're in conflict.
Yeah.
And probably about 50% of them, but then about 80% of them have attachment issues. And they've polarized their life so much that they fought for so much that everything seems polarized.
Right. It's just this constant, everything's a battle.
Yeah. But what's so cool is once you teach them about their temperament, and then you teach them about attachment, and then we just start getting real and talking, you immediately start cutting through it. And we're different. All that is we're different. But
understanding it.
Usually in this office, I don't ever turn my overhead lights on. I have lights from my windows, the sunlight from the windows. I don't turn my overhead lights on because I don't want more stimulation.
Yeah.
Right. But when I'm going to do a speech tonight, I'm going to go speak to 300 chaplains and their spouses.
Oh,
I know, super cool. And so on my way there, I will turn up music and I'll start pumping myself up and it will amp me up.
For the
and then I can deliver. And then after I've delivered, I'll schmooze. But if I have to schmooze really long time, it would kill me. So I eventually will then leave. And when I drive home, and she talks to me more on the way home.
Right.
And we've just learned how to do it.
So you're working with, it's cool. You're working with what's happening.
Your skills, you. Yeah. No, it's beautiful. And it actually, it doesn't have to be, it's not a curse. These differences are real. I really think that's why God puts you together. It's to maximize the difference and to maximize your willingness to submit to the goodness of another. And allowing your partner to correct your own weakness too.
Which I think is the greatest advantage and benefit of a marriage is you have this person you love more than anyone else in the world helping you become better. But you have to be willing to change. Where that was so inside what we said earlier. If I go in to the best refinement model that exists and I say, no, thanks, don't you dare suggest that I make improvements.
Right.
Then I lose on one of the greatest things in life.
And you can see why you like that idea of not improving or developing or just being loved for who you are is because you have attachment issues. You just want to know you're lovable, capable, belonging, and safe. That's all you want to know.
And so that's born of a deep insecurity.
Insecurity. Yeah. But see, so watch. Yeah. But what you do is, so the way you protect your insecurity is you set up boundaries. And your boundaries are to make sure no one else can hurt you. But the minute you make boundaries so no one else can hurt you, you have now disabled everybody from, and yourself,
Helping
from actually learning to grow and to
Yeah.
adapt. Our goal shouldn't be to make rules to keep everyone out. Our goal should be to become strong enough to let everyone in.
Let everyone in. But okay, so I went through this without knowing it when I was early on. You remember my story. I was out on my own at 16, right?
Yeah.
And hurting. And so I'm like, oh, that hurt. I'm putting up walls. I have to protect myself. So I built a fortress, only later to realize all I just done is created solitary confinement. Right? I'd taken my own journey and my own experience and walled myself in. Right?
Yeah.
And so then the loneliness drove me to tear down the walls.
Yeah. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. This is so profound. So beautiful, brother.
Yeah.
I want to ask specifically, there was a few things I read that for a long time, money or money issues was the thing people thought about the most. But then it switched and they said that it was the sexual relationship that became the number one topic of conflict. And it's almost like, I want to ask and I want your perspective, but after everything you just said, it's like, it's not the thing. It ain't the grapes, like, Aesop's fable. It ain't the grapes. It's all the underlying stuff. But these issues do come up, I'm sure.
That's what I call the smoke. So smoke is everything we fight about that's not the real issue. Wow. It's the money, the sex, the kids. And it just depends where you are, right, in the marriage. Like sex is usually a problem. Again, it depends on how you identify how you're valued, right? But money is an issue. If you notice, money and sex are about love and power. It's about you wanting me. It's about, so wherever there's smoke, there's going to be fire. Fire is the real, what I call the starved issue. The real triggered issues are the fire. So anytime I hear money issues, so I had a couple that was fighting over a $500 purse. $400 purse. The husband couldn't believe a woman bought a $400 purse. That's ridiculous. Nobody needs a $400 purse. She clarifies it's not a purse, it's a bag.
And they're hitting the little things.
I don't care what you call it. Nobody needs it. Nobody needs a $400 bag. She said, oh, really? How much was your golf bag that you just bought for your clubs? And he's like, what are you talking about? Now they're fighting about a golf bag.
Right.
And then
I need that. That's my gear.
That. And that wasn't 400. That was 370. And now they're fighting about 370 is 400, you dork. So now they're fighting about how you round. So as a mediator, I would see that happen all the time. They just fight in the smoke, but no one would pay attention to the fire. So the fire are those, what I call the starved issues. That's what I wrote my book on, is feeding the starved needs. Yeah. Safety is a starved need. Everyone needs to feel safe. Trust, appreciation, respect, validation, encouragement, dedication. So underlying every smoky issue, you'll hear the starved issue. The woman wanted to be safe enough to shop without being judged by it. The man wanted to be financially safe, so we're not wasting money. The woman eventually got mad at him because he cared more about golfing than her. So that's dedication. That's part of the starved issue. Yeah. So if you listen to somebody's complaint, you'll usually be able to detect what the real issue is. Is it a safety issue? Trust and appreciation. If we're fighting about home chores, it's how we want to be appreciated. If we're fighting about what you called me in front of your parents, that's probably respect. So what I see a lot is there's a pattern of male female that's really common, where a lot of times when women are afraid or unsafe, they're going to say something. And when they say something, the man feels disrespected or ashamed. And when he's ashamed or disrespected, he's going to make her unsafe. He's going to either blow up and get mad, or he's going to run away and withdraw.
Okay,
So
hold on. Walk through that
yeah,
one more time. That is genius. In
that's
this
it.
whole thing of ignorance, right?
Yeah,
Understanding this pattern you just
yeah.
described is
Fear
critical.
begets shame. Her fear makes her worried. Are we going to pay our taxes, Greg? And you're like, oh my gosh, of course we're paying our taxes. We pay our taxes every year. And then she's like, why are you yelling? It's not a big deal. Can I not just ask a question? Well, yeah. Do you think I'm a thief?
Yeah, you think I'm an idiot?
Yeah. So now we're fighting. But what we're fighting about is her fear of maybe what she doesn't know, her lack of safety, and his need for respect. And when he's not respected, he'll shame. So men shame far too much, and women fear far too much. So fear begets shame, fear begets shame. And then that takes us back to those attachment issues. I don't feel lovable. I don't feel capable. I don't belong. I'm not safe. What's my script? Blow it up. What's my script? Run away. And we just run away, or we blow it up. And that's your fight. That's your Thursday night fight or your Friday night fight. And all we really want deep down is to just be cared for, right? To be loved.
Let's just love and connect. And we end up sabotaging the very thing we want. We take these funky little vehicles, and we ruin the very thing we're seeking for. The need we want so desperately will get reactive and ruin what we almost had.
And watch what we're talking about, Greg. It's normal. This is the norm. This is predictable. So even when we talk about it, it sounds like, wow, where did that come from? But it comes from the place that we all know. Like we've all lived there. There's a great quote by Carl Jung. It says, that which is most personal is most universal.
Yes.
So the most personal insecurity you have is universal.
Universal.
Every man's got it.
Yeah.
But what we want to claim is we're so unique. And honestly, we're not.
Right.
And there, in fact, have you read anything by Timothy Keller?
No.
Holy cow. Timothy Keller is he's a Christian writer, but listen to this quote. This is the most unbelievable quote you'll ever hear. Okay. He says, to be loved. So what we're all seeking, and this sounds real fluffy for men, but in a nutshell, this is all we wanted from that baseball team when we were 15, or from our parents, or from our wife. We want this. So listen, to be loved but not known is comforting but superficial. To be known and not loved is our greatest fear. But to be fully known and truly loved is, well, a lot like being loved by God. It is what we need more than anything. It liberates us from pretense. It humbles us out of our self-righteousness and fortifies us for any difficulty life can throw at us. Boom. All we want is to be fully known by the people around us and truly loved.
Yes. Which what you just described, that is true intimacy.
That's it. Intimacy. Yeah.
You see it all.
Yeah.
And love me anyways.
And so intimacy comes from the root, or intimacy comes from the Latin root word intimus, which means the deep inner being.
Yeah.
So, but we're too afraid to let that out. And
because we want love. We want love, ironically. And so I'm like, I'm gonna hide this.
That's right.
Keep you
so
out
notice
here.
what that is. So that's the male shame inherently. That's our shame, which is why we want to be revered and respected, because that'll take care of our shame. And what the women want is they're too afraid to just love you. Like I always joke that my wife will always say, Matt, tell me what you're thinking. You never tell me what you're thinking. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, you can't handle what I'm thinking. You can't handle it. And she's like, no, I really can. I really can. And so then I might say, I was thinking about having sex. And she's like, oh, is that all you think about? I'm like,
exactly.
Yeah, pretty much. Or one time we were driving to St. George in Southern Utah. And I just thought I wasn't going to do it, but I was thinking this. there was a dry river that went under the freeway, and you could see water, a flash flood would go that way. And so what I was thinking is, if I took our Suburban with our family in it and I hit the bridge and I jumped the Suburban across the river, could I land it? Would I clear the river? This is all going on in my head.
Right.
Would I clear the river?
I've done the same thing. I'm rolling along like, ooh, I could do this.
Could I? And then she's looking at me like, that's what you're thinking when you're driving? And I'm like, well, yeah, I wouldn't do it, but I want to know if I could. I was just thinking. So she can't handle what I'm thinking. And because we all kind of know that others around us might not handle it, we don't show ourselves. So no one can really know us. And because we're so afraid they won't love us. And so that all of this goes back to the same thing. So then what we do is we build something that we know everyone will love. I can't tell you right now, I have clients, millionaires, billionaires, airplanes, Lambos, you name it. I've got tons of them, but they all want what we just talked about. They want to be known fully and loved completely. Everyone wants that. And every one of them would tell me all of the Lambos and the big things they've built are nothing more than to have that little thing met.
Yeah.
That's it.
And is that manifesting for them in this desire to be respected?
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of what's happening?
Yeah, that's the counterfeit. Because then if men respect me, by the way, and everybody, like the minute you reach a level of notoriety or fame, that's the first part of that quote. You are known, but not loved. Or you might be loved, but nobody knows you. So everybody loves the movie star, but very few people know him.
Right.
So it's comforting, but it's superficial.
So still lonely.
Yeah, you're still lonely. And so this is amazing. I just had, I got a call from a friend whose sister is dying of brain tumor. And she's kind of a fan of what we do and watches a lot of the stuff I teach. So she just found out it's terminal. It's taking over. There's no changing it. She's going to die. And she just wanted to come meet with me.
Oh, special.
And so the whole time I'm like, what do you, so she came in yesterday, but you get to sit with somebody that's on the end of it all.
Yeah.
And what you hope is by the time you get to that point, you're no longer chasing the need to be loved and the need to be known. Hopefully you could get through that by then. But weirdly, her last time on earth is going to be about that.
Right.
And what she came to the resolve was, when she'd talk about the problem, she'd talk about it as a wise 70-year-old who's about to die. And every once in a while, she'd break into her script of a little 7-year-old girl who's being victimized by everyone else's lack of caring. And all I had to do was show her did you see what happened right there? You went right to your 7-year-old. There's no one on this earth right now that's more powerful in this woman's circle than she is. The dying person is always the most powerful,
right?
Because she's going where no one's has been and where everyone's afraid to go.
Yep.
And she's doing it. So we sat and built a bunch of tools for her to get everyone back into that intimate moment with her. And in that intimate moment, what she wants to do is teach each of them. She knows them, and she loves them. And we got tools. And now, like, she's going to bring her husband over and sit him down and teach him. Because what he does is, instead of getting intimate and vulnerable about losing her, he gets technical and starts preparing the financials.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll spend hours preparing the financials instead of being with his wife.
Yep, really connecting.
And he's just trying to detach. So every one of us, this is the Memoriam Muerta, the Stoic thought. Remember, everyone dies, right? So there's going to be a point, and we all need to live so that this isn't a problem. There's going to be a point we're going to die, and everyone will be gathered around us. And if you had 2 months to live, what would you want the relationship to be? And we've got to make it so we're safe enough in that moment to be real.
Yep.
The last thing I would want in my last hours of life is to talk about my portfolio and how much money I made, or how big my company got, or my social media draw. You know what I mean? So a really good thing for everyone to think about is if you had 2 months, if you had 2 years to live, go write down everything how you would change your life knowing you had 2 years. Then go do, if you had 2 months to live, how would you adjust? Who would you make sure is around you regularly if you had 2 months to live? And if you had 2 days to live, what would you do? And if you had 2 hours to live, what would you do? And if you had 20 minutes to live? And get down to the essential things, right? Remember, Thoreau went to the woods because he wished to live deliberately, to confront the essential facts of life and see what life had to teach, and not when he comes to die, discover that he has not lived. So you want to get the essential facts. And then you've got to get good enough at those essential facts to sit. So in one day yesterday, I sat with a woman who's dying, and I sat with a couple that's getting married in 10 days and just found out that she's a rabid high sensitive.
Good to find that out early on.
Super good to know right then. And he's a big high sensation seeker. So it's like the Dennings.
Yeah.
And then I found out, and then the last one was a really good family friend that is divorcing. And they made the decision with me in their presence. They made the decision they're divorcing. And we talked about how we're going to do it. And both were crying.
You get to see that in one day.
That's one day. One day. And today I'll do it again.
Yeah.
We'll do this. We'll do 2 or 3 clients, and then I'll have 300 chaplains.
Yeah.
And again, they're all seeing that every day.
Right.
But that is the essence of what you're here for, right? Is to learn not to build a bigger facade like you talked about. You don't need bigger forts. You need the force to sit in the uncomfortable space and be one and create some at 1 minute.
That is manliness.
Yeah, that's it.
You want to talk about manliness?
That's the highest form, right?
You sit in it.
Yeah. And the less you need. So the best sign that you are there is the less stuff you need. You don't need, like, if you have a glioblastoma and you're going to die, what do you need? Like, did you ever hear the story Eckhart Tolle told about the ring? There's a woman that he was counseling, and she had an heirloom ring. She was a single woman, about 45. She was dying of cancer, and her grandparents grandparents had given her an heirloom ring. And it was so valuable to her because that kind of made her the most important grandchild kind of thing. Yeah. But she's dying of cancer. And so as she's kind of withering away, they took the ring off and she gave it to a nurse, and the ring disappeared. And so Eckhart came to visit her, and as he's talking to her, she's like, and my ring's gone. I mean, and she was all upset and frustrated. And Eckhart's like, well, now that the ring's missing, what have you lost? Like, of worth, what have you lost? And she's like, well, I mean, the value of the ring and just the memento that I could have given to someone, and just the connection to and he's like, well, you still have the connection, right?
Yeah. And
she's like, yeah. And he's like, this was so mind blowing. He's like, you know, you're dying, right? And she's like, yeah. And he said, you know, when you die, you're not taking the ring with you, right? And she's like, yeah. And then he said, when do you think you're going to be ready to let the ring go? In the end, it all goes back in the box.
Yeah.
Right? It all goes back in the box. And so the ring just becomes the symbol, supposedly, of her being more loved and more known. But the symbol will never hold what we know in our essence.
Reality. Yeah.
So being the real human, the real man, would be able to sit in it, let the wave of insecurity come. Don't have to fight it. Let it just roll over you, and then get back into peace and sit in it and quit putting things up. That's why Buddha, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, Christ, every one of them ended up walking away with nothing.
Yeah.
They had no thing that was binding them to anything. What was binding them were their principles: commitment and love and sacrifice and service and character and hard work and integrity. And that's what binds us. That's what makes us the man. Yep. And the minute you feel the reaction, it doesn't make you less of a man. That's actually part of being man. React, notice it, and then let it go.
Yep.
And don't
stay.
Yeah. And sit.
Don't run. Don't fight.
Yeah.
Notice it, feel it, let it go, stay with it.
Power.
Dude.
Isn't that cool, man? It's
so
awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
This is
so
good.
These are the essentials of life, right? And we complicate it with everything else. Marriage is that simple. It's not supposed to be easy. It won't be easy. In fact, it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it's not always right. You know, you can romanticize it that it's always right, you know, but it's not. Sometimes there's abuse, there's painful stuff.
Sure.
And many times we give up on it way before we need to. And a lot of times when you're giving up on it, it's not you giving up on it. It's your 13-year-old script. It's your 12-year-old script. It's either if you have a controlling partner, that's their 12-year-old script.
Yep.
No healthy adult needs to control. They don't. And if you tend to be really upset by being controlled, I bet you have a 12-year-old script of being controlled. And we used to think that it was always mom and dad that did it, but now we know that you can pick up these scripts anywhere. And the answer is not running, because if you divorce, you'll still have a 60 or 70% chance in your second and third marriage to have
playing that script, man. The script hasn't changed.
Yeah. So I always say, put the marriage on the shelf. Let's fix the script.
Yes.
Learn these skills. Let's learn to talk. Let's learn to be real. Then let's bring the marriage down, and then let's decide if we want to fix it. So of my 80% or of my clients that I work with, 80% that the ones that are struggling in their marriage, thinking of divorce, we have an 80% chance of those people fixing their marriage.
Nice.
Because when they get the skills and they can talk, all of a sudden, that's all we wanted. Now you're knowing me, and now you're loving, and now you're trying to sacrifice for each other. And weirdly, that's what grows love.
And can one, I'm curious. I have a belief about this, but I want to hear this. Can one individual in the marriage going through this process transform the marriage?
Yeah. Yeah. Because, by the way, can one person absolutely screw it up?
Yep.
Yeah. So if you have the power, that's the beauty of the system, right? So if one person can universally screw it up, one person can also universally enhance it. The quote is, 2 heads are better than one, but 1 is better than 0.
Yep.
So now it doesn't mean everyone has to choose, but what I honestly believe, very few of us in marriage are actually choosing. Most of us are just reacting.
Agreed.
Most of us habitually are just living the way we know how to live.
Yeah.
And
it's survival brain, just default mode all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it? And it's cool once you start to notice it. And then what part of the problem are you? What are their needs and wants? What do you both want most together? And then what can I do right now? Those are just 4 lights. What part of the problem am I? Self-awareness. Empathy. What are their needs and wants? Vision. What do we both want most together? Big picture. What's the most important thing I can do right now? Conscience.
Yeah.
So use your self-awareness, use your empathy, use your vision, use your conscience to guide you back to the path. And then, great C.S. Lewis quote, the cross comes before the crown, and tomorrow's another Monday morning. So you'll have to suffer your cross before you get your crown, and we start again tomorrow.
And tomorrow,
Awesome.
Monday morning,
Do it again
back to
tomorrow.
work.
That's
Gotta
right.
do the laundry, wash the dishes.
Yep.
Back
Do
at it, brother.
Yeah. Yeah. That's that Buddhist idea. You reach transcendence and you're back, and you've like reached the highest levels of transcendence. And now we've got to sweep the floor and plant the garden.
Exactly.
That's
back at it.
It's just what you do. Yeah.
Whoa. I got to ask one more, because this comes up so often. And this is really, really difficult. So you take, let's take a gentleman, for example, and he notices some of these challenges, some scripts maybe in his spouse.
Yeah.
What's the best way for him to begin helping her?
Yeah. Great question. So, when you ask that, one thing I think about, if you think of a bullseye, in a bullseye, in the middle of the bullseye is what I call your spirit, your essence, who you really are. Outside of that is another circle we'll call your mind, how you think you should be, kind of the world's scripting. So a lot of your scripting comes from that. And then outside of that is your body, which is your chemistry. So when I work with somebody and I want to try to help them to improve, first thing I've got to do is make sure I'm not coming at them from my mind. I have to be in my spirit. And because here's why. So, and again, I don't want to get all scriptural churchy, but like Christ always taught, without the spirit, you don't teach. So if I can't be in my essence, then I shouldn't say anything about
you're speaking from a different space. It's not a good one.
That's right. And so what will happen are two minds will start fighting, and two habitual chemistries will fire. So the body and the mind starts fighting the body and the mind. So that's what I was teaching that woman. Instead of getting in the body mind fight as you're dying, no one can get to essence faster than she can. Yeah. Because she's so close to the veil. And so what I would do if I really wanted to influence it is I'd get in to make sure I'm in my spirit, not just my mind mad about her script. Then I would use that spirit, that essence, to try to take the place of her. And a question I ask a lot is, what is it like to be her?
Married to you.
Married to me.
You.
And then what it will give me is compassion. That gives me empathy. And I want to go there until I feel moved. And then start thinking about what her script might be. And go get some books. There's a great book called Hold Me Tight by Sue Johnson. That's a great book about attachment. And then start learning about your attachment. Talk about yours with her. Talk about what you're thinking. Hey, I think I'm just learning something. I'm wondering if that pain you're feeling might be attachment. And if I'm in the spirit, I could say, could I teach you something I just learned about me? And I just got a prompting about you as my wife. Then I had a lot of compassion because I was just thinking, what's it like to be you married to me? Yeah. And I realized as a high sensitive, it's got to be really hard for you to be married to me, because I always want breaks. I always want to be away from people. I always want less, and you always want more. So I bet you feel like I suck the life out of you sometimes. And if I show that now from that spirit, she'll start to move into spirit. And when she moves into spirit, then I try to teach her what I'm learning about her, or invite her to come learn this with me. Yep. The power of these attachment issues is we can go talk about them together. And as I help give her what she never had when she was 8, and she gives me what I never had when I was 12 or whatever, we're actually healing each other. And finally, instead of fighting about money or sex, what we're realizing is all your husband really wants is to know he's loved. And all your wife really wants is to know that you're going to help around the house. Because she as a kid didn't have help, and mom made her the only girl in the family, always had to do the work things,
do everything.
Boys went to sports. Yep. So I would just say, get into your essence no matter what you do, and then don't move on the idea until you're moved with compassion. And until she sees that you have compassion towards her, then you move. If she doesn't see you have compassion towards her, then you don't talk.
You can't do it. You can't reach her.
No.
And
that's you'll see that in every major wisdom literature. We don't move from our mind. We real change has to take place from our essence, spirit to spirit. And most of the time, by the way, your spirit isn't deeply troubled by much, in the world. The spirit's really calm and okay, we'll get through this. We'll figure this out.
It's the deep ocean under all the waves and the wind.
That's right.
It's just still.
Still. Be still and know that I am. Yeah. It's powerful.
Oh man. So good, brother.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate you so much. This is
you too.
So insightful and so helpful.
I'm proud of you guys. But like living, you're doing it. That's how we change, one prompting at a time. Now you'll move to your next area. You'll go to your next country. You'll change the next life there. And it's cool. You don't need to change 50. You just work on the one. Yep. And then the next one will appear and we'll work on that one. Yep. Line upon line. It's powerful. Proud of you. Keep it up.
Oh, this is good stuff, man. Hey, how can people reach out to you? Of course, I highly recommend your book.
Yeah.
So where can they connect with you and learn from you?
All they got to do is go to matttownsend.com. It's 3 words, matttownsend.com. We've got some cool stuff. I'm about to launch a coaching program where I'm going to teach an in-depth program that kind of combines a lot of my academic work and my coaching on how to coach relationships. My goal is peace. We're going to teach people how to be peacemakers. Yes. So they can go to matttownsend.com, find out about that. We'll be launching that in right before the end of the year of 2022. And then we're going to also have some really cool coaching programs. So you can just do it for about $50 a month. You can sit down and learn all of our skills, all of the classes.
And don't wait till your marriage is falling apart to sign up.
Get in,
be proactive.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, love you, brother. Thanks so much.
Love you too. Man. Thank you. Tell Rach hi.